Today's video is all about ground beef. You may have some hamburger meat you need to use up, or maybe you just want some new ways to use it. Hey y'all, I'm Valerie, and welcome to my kitchen. In today's video, I'm sharing 5 of our favorite ground beef recipes. They're easy to make, they're all made with simple ingredients, and I think your family will love them. Now let's go ahead and get started. You have got to try these Salisbury steaks. I'm starting out in a large bowl. I added in 1 pound of lean ground beef. I also added 2 teaspoons of ketchup, and I just eyeballed most of this. And that was 1 teaspoon of mustard and about a teaspoon of Worcestershire sauce. And for the seasonings, I did a teaspoon of garlic powder and a half a teaspoon of onion powder. And if you want, you can add salt and pepper. You'll also need 1/3 cup of cracker crumbs. I just mixed that up a little with my hands there. Then I divided that mixture into 4 hamburger patties. Now we're going to take these over to the stovetop. In a large skillet, I have a couple tablespoons of oil. I added in those hamburgers. Now just let those cook for about 4 or 5 minutes on both sides until they're no longer pink. Now we're going to take them out so we can make up the gravy. I just removed them to a separate plate and then set them aside. I turned the heat down to low. You'll want to leave those drippings in that pan there. I added 2 cups of hot water and 2 packets of brown gravy mix. Now you're just going to whisk that until everything is well blended. It is almost done. We've just got a couple more things to add in. A teaspoon of ketchup and a splash of Worcestershire sauce. Now give that another good whisk. You can turn the heat up a little to bring it to a simmer and let that gravy start to thicken up. Now you're going to add those hamburgers back in and just kind of flip them over and make sure they get covered in that gravy. By the way, if this is your first time here and you love simple and easy recipes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss out on any of my future videos. I let that simmer for about 5 minutes to give that gravy a chance to thicken, and then this was ready to serve. I served these with some of those good old instant mashed potatoes and green beans. These were delicious. You gotta try them. You're going to love this 1-pot cheeseburger gnocchi. I'm starting out in a large skillet. I added a couple tablespoons of butter, and you'll want to let that melt down a little bit. Then you're going to add in a 16-ounce package of gnocchi. You're just wanting to toast this up a little bit. I turned the heat up to medium-high and let it cook for about 2 or 3 minutes on each side until it got a little golden brown. That shouldn't take long. And when that's done, you're going to remove it to a separate plate and set it aside. Now to that same pan, I added 1 small diced onion and half a pound of ground beef. And I just broke that up and let it cook until that ground beef was cooked through. I'm going to go ahead and add in some seasonings here. I added a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of pepper, half a teaspoon of paprika, but you could also do smoked paprika here, and 1 teaspoon of cumin. And this was a brand new bottle, and I could not get this stuff to shake out. I had to take that little shaker lid off, and I accidentally sprinkled a little too much. That's okay, a little extra flavor's not going to hurt anything. Add in a 1/4 teaspoon of ground mustard, and this was extra, but I just added a little bit of that nature seasoning. When that ground beef is cooked through, you can just wiggle around a little paper towel to get rid of some of that grease. Now you're going to add in 1½ teaspoons of minced garlic and just toss that around and let it cook for about a minute or so, just until that garlic becomes fragrant. Now you're going to add an undrained can of diced tomatoes with green chilies and 1 cup of beef broth. Now just give that a really good stir, and I also added a couple teaspoons of Worcestershire sauce. Mix that together And now we can go ahead and add in that toasted gnocchi. While I'm thinking about it, what kind of recipes do y'all like to make? Do you like one-pot meals, casseroles, crock-pot dinners? Let me know in the comments below. After I got that mixed up, I did try to press that gnocchi down just to make sure it was completely submerged in that liquid. I brought this to a boil, then I covered it and reduced the heat to a simmer, and I let it simmer for about 5 minutes or so, just until that gnocchi was tender. Then I gave everything a really good stir. Just a couple more things to add: 1 cup of shredded cheese and about 1/4 cup of heavy cream. Stir that, and I forgot to mention, I did make this in an oven-safe skillet, but if you don't have one though, you can go ahead and transfer this to a casserole dish. I topped it with another cup of shredded cheese, and then I put that in the oven on broil just for a couple minutes, just until that cheese was melted and the top was a little golden brown. When this is done, it'll still be a little liquidy. I wouldn't serve it immediately, but after it sits for about 10 minutes or so, it really thickens up. This turned out so good, and that ground beef and gnocchi will really fill you up. This is a comfort food dinner for sure, and I love that it only took less than 30 minutes to make. Perfect for those busy weeknights. This country hamburger skillet is a new family favorite. In a large skillet, I added 1 pound of ground beef. Mine was probably a little too lean though, you'll see in a minute. I also added half a diced onion. You're just going to break that up and let it cook until that ground beef is cooked through. Then add in a teaspoon of minced garlic. Stir that around and let it cook for about a minute or so. By the way, I did get this recipe from my sweet friend Mel over at In the Kitchen with Mama Mel. I'll have her channel linked below. I pushed all that ground beef to the side, and because it was so lean, I added a tablespoon of bacon grease. Then I added about 6 thinly sliced Yukon Gold potatoes. You can also use russet potatoes too, if that's what you have on hand. And I just seasoned them up with a little nature seasoning. And Mel added Worcestershire sauce to hers, but I wanted to try it with a little of the Dale's steak seasoning. We add this to our hamburgers. It is so good. And I'm just using the generic brand here. And yes, I added a little more bacon grease, because that's what helps those potatoes cook up nice and crispy. Then stir all that together, and you're going to turn your heat down to medium-low. Then we're going to cover it and let it continue to cook for about 15 minutes. After that, go ahead and take the lid off, and we're going to gently stir this, kind of toss everything around, kind of bring everything from the bottom of the pan to the top. And you want those potatoes to get a little color on them. Just make sure you get everything stirred around, that way all those potatoes get tender. Now you're going to put the lid back on and let it cook for another 15 minutes. And I did toss everything around about halfway through. And I know the hamburger and potatoes alone are delicious, but I'm taking them to the next level here, and I'm going to add on 1.5 cups of shredded cheese. Now cover it back up and let it continue to cook just until that cheese is melted. And y'all, I am so glad I tried this. It was absolutely amazing. I knew when Mel made it, it was going to be delicious. Y'all go check her out. I'll link her channel below. I just love her. I just served it alongside a simple little side salad. This was so easy to throw together, and it was a meal that my whole family loved. This garlic bread casserole is so easy to make. I'm cutting the recipe in half, so I'm just using this small 8x8 baking dish. I'm using 4 slices of the frozen garlic Texas toast, and I just fit those things in there the best way I could. And if you want to make more, you could easily double this recipe and use a 9x13. Now I'm popping these in the oven to bake at 425 for about 12 minutes. And meanwhile, over in a large skillet, I added a tablespoon of oil along with half a diced onion. I tossed that around and let it go ahead and start cooking for just a couple minutes. Then I added in 1 pound of ground beef. But if you wanted to cut that back to a half, you certainly could. Just let it cook until that ground beef is cooked through. Then I went ahead and used a paper towel to get rid of that grease. Now I'm adding in a 24-ounce jar of marinara sauce. And feel free to use your favorite sauce here. Then stir that until it's all mixed together. You could also doctor this up and add any seasonings you like. I just figured that the garlic toast had enough salt and garlic powder in it. I'm back over at the counter and that garlic bread is out of the oven. I sprinkled it with about a half a cup of shredded cheese and then covered it in that meat sauce mixture. You could really get away with only doing half a pound of ground beef. Or if you're making a full 9x13, you could just do a whole pound. But my husband likes this with a little extra hamburger meat, so that's what I do. And you just want to spread that out until all that bread is covered. Now I'm topping it with about a cup and a half of shredded cheese. Now, I didn't say this was healthy. I said it was easy to make. And y'all, this is good to have for supper. I put that back in the oven just to let that cheese melt. And if you wanted to, you could broil it for about a minute just to get that top golden brown. This may not look the prettiest, but it is so good. This would be good to make any night of the week. This one pot burrito bowl is another super easy one. In a large pot or a high-walled skillet, you're going to add 1 pound of lean ground beef. I also added in 1 diced onion and 1 diced red bell pepper. But really any bell pepper would work. You're just going to break that up and cook it until that ground beef is cooked through. And by the way, if you're enjoying this video, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. This had a good little bit of grease, so I got rid of it and returned it to the stovetop. Next, I added 1 can of rinsed and drained black beans, but you could also use pintos, 1 can of drained corn, 1 can of diced tomatoes with green chilies, and I did not drain those. I added a half a cup of salsa, and I just kind of eyeballed that. The recipe only calls for 1 tablespoon of taco seasoning, and the kids love it this way, but if you wanted to go 2 tablespoons, that would be fine too. I also added a teaspoon of chili powder and a little pepper. Now you're going to pour in 2 cups of beef broth, but you could also use chicken broth. Now I'm adding in 1 cup of cooked jasmine rice. And yes, I about made a complete mess there. Just make sure you use long grain rice and not the instant kind. Now you're going to give all that a really good stir. I covered it and let it simmer for about 15 or 20 minutes. And make sure you stir it every few minutes just to make sure that rice doesn't stick to the bottom. This pot I'm using here is kind of bad about that, so I have to really make sure I get it off the bottom. Mine only took about 15 minutes, so just whenever your rice is done, stir it all up, and then we're going to add in 1 cup of shredded cheese. And after you get all that mixed together, this is ready to serve. This was easy to make, and you could really do so many different things with it. You could do like I do and eat it in a bowl. I like to top it with sour cream and taco sauce. You could wrap some up in a tortilla and toast it up in the skillet. Or you could even get you some scoops and eat it like that. Either way, I'm sure it'll be good. I really hope you enjoyed this video. You may also like these. Don't forget to subscribe down below. That way you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I will see you in the next one.